Alright, we are recording for Chapter 2 of Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. I am predicting this might not be a terribly long video. I don't think there's going to be anything yet to trigger rants or ramblings from me. Well, probably still some ramblings, but we'll see. I will also say this, though, right off the bat. I did also very much enjoy this chapter, so please keep it up. Keep it up. So yeah, first highlight I have here, we're following Bones. And he and Kirk are in a turbolift heading actually somewhere. I'm not entirely sure where. Because we then get a reference later to Kirk and Spock being in a turbolift going to the bridge with Bones already there. So this is like maybe it's just they got on board on heading to the quarters. Anyway. Funny, he'd never noticed until that moment how much silver had crept into Jim's hair over the past few years. So we're basically just getting the setup that at least Bones is recognizing how much they are all aging, and that, wow, we're really coming too close to the end of this. That, you know, like, even this just traveling on the turbolift with Kirk is not something that it's like that's going to come to an end before long. That is settling in for him. So yeah, and it is. I will be interested to see how some of it works out, because that is one criticism I do kind of remember having for Wrath of Khan. In the movie, it seemed a little bit more pressed, the idea of Kirk feeling old, but in the novelization, it never really felt like it was there. And to be fair, I think it also just, even at the end, wasn't really pushed much there. It's like, even when he does deliver the line of, "I feel young," there was also the context given of, like, well, Saavik and his son are, hanging out just, a few feet away. So it's like, seeing that could also be part of it, in the Genesis plan forming there. It's like, even with Spock's death, he's back in command of the Enterprise, at least temporarily. So it's like, it's still that larger context that helps that. But this, though, I'm okay with this giving us reminders of their old age. I'm okay with that because it is their last great adventure, and there is that aspect of the end of an era has arrived. That their retirement, but also that the Klingon, the tension with the Klingon Empire is coming to an end as well. I'm like, it is a major closing event that is arriving very soon for them. So them reflecting on their age, it's entirely appropriate. And I am interested to see how this will work out, because will you see them at times having to fight their age, at times proving that age is irrelevant for them, that, it's like, I'm just this good. Well, not quite like that, but just age doesn't have to hold them back at all. Sort of an age is a point of view kind of thing. There are things that could be very interesting there, potentialities. So anyway, what's this next highlight? Oh yeah, that's right. So it's in the turbo lift. Spock. I'm screwing it all up. Bones. McCoy is the one who stops it to talk to Kirk. And he finds out about that Carol was on Themis. The doctor put a hand on Jim's shoulder. "Jim, I'm so sorry. How can the sons of bitches, how can they even ask you to be here? Smiley could have asked someone else. He could have asked Sulu." "Maybe," Jim straightened, met McCoy's gaze once again. "I can't buck orders, Bones. Even if I could have stayed with Carol, I kept telling myself, what good could I do being with her now? Looking at it selfishly, at least this way I can stay busy until I know something. This mission won't take a week, a few days at most, and then I'll be with her again." And even, Bones in his mind is, saying the whole, assuming she lives that long, but it still is. I do appreciate this because it's a good way to maintain a reminder, how I put in the previous video, of Kirk having a special motivation here, which is an anger and hatred of the Klingons because of David, that's been pushed up again because of the Kudau massacre, but also the injury to Carol, which, as much as I dislike the Kirk-Carol relationship, for reasons I've already explained, at this point, it is serving a purpose, so I do accept it. So, like, we're getting that special motivation, but at the same time, though, we are getting here, like, he's thinking not about his fears concerning her situation, but him being Kirk. Kirk just being Kirk here, which is, I have a job to do, I'm going to do it. He's not giving into the hatred here, because it is his special motivation, that it is something unusual. It is something separate from the rest. It is a specific thing. It's not the normal motivations for him. So I do like that scene. I feel like that is how it is often being presented to you. It consistently has that context. Then Bones gives a little bit of psychobabble that, I mean, it's not... I would say he is wrong, but I fully understand his point. Because he's talking about how, it's like soon you'll be giving up the Enterprise again. Just making a point that after David's death, Kirk wasn't able to grieve. He had to save the crew. He did also have to give up the Enterprise. He had to use self-destruct. And it's just like, you kind of have him do that again with retirement. And at that point, you will cease to be Captain James Kirk. You'll be the human Kirk. Maybe the human being has never been able to forgive the Klingons for the death of his son. Krug stole the only family you had, stole the chance you had to get to know David. He won't be waiting for you when you retire. And I understand completely McCoy's point here. The disagreement I would have is an in-universe one that it's like, Kirk is still Captain Kirk. There is no readily separated human Kirk half. This is who he is. It's like, even when he's off the bridge, he's if he isn't in vacation mode, he's still Captain Kirk. He will be that character always, kind of thing. But also I highlighted this because I do like how it's just describing it as Krug stole the only family you had. Because I didn't like in the previous... I think it was the prologue with describing Krug as a murderer. As a cold-blooded murderer. And it's like... Because it's such a Spock novelization, I really liked that. And it depicted Krug far more as just the Paragon Klingon warrior. And it gives so much more nuance to his actions. He's not just a bad guy. And so I appreciate it being like this, because this is completely true. Him being cold-blooded murder, it's like, it's more complicated than that. Not really what I want to go with there. Though I think that was also being stated with, like, Kirk being angry, so he is going to be more offensive to Krug, but still. I do appreciate that, because it is still, this is completely accurate. He did steal David from you. Yes, absolutely. Even within Klingon culture, that would still be true. Alright, then we do have Kirk and Spock on a turbolift. They're going up to the bridge. Spock, I'm still not happy about your manipulating me into this, but I know I said a lot of angry things yesterday. I just want you to know that I don't want a war any more than you do. Despite what happened on Themis, I will afford the Klingons every courtesy. Spock lifted a brow in mild surprise. I had no doubt whatsoever of that, Captain. I regret the most unfortunate timing. Is there any further word on Dr. Marcus's condition? Which actually kind of shorten up that highlight there. Which, and there's even a little bit after this, I don't think either of us needs to apologize, that Kirk is saying. And it is, I mean, no, Kirk technically does need to apologize. And he has. That it's, I would say, well, Spock needs to apologize as a point of politeness, but because they're brothers, essentially, it doesn't need to be stated. Yeah, I regret the most unfortunate timing. That alone is kind of enough of an apology from Spock. Kirk, however, saying the whole, I know I said a lot of angry things yesterday, but I want you to know I don't want to... That is his apology, and it is still pretty good. I mean, for what this situation is, and for what his feelings are, that is a good apology there. This is, just making it clear as well that he is also acknowledging, I'm not normally, that angry person, which Spock knows as well. But it's like Kirk is also acknowledging that was unusual for me, and I don't like that. But he's not denying that that was him. Excuse me, that did come from him. But he's still saying, I'm going to be in control. I'm not going to let that control me. I'm not going to screw this up. Because I do also value it. It's just, there's that other stuff. And then we get this I liked in part because of the humor. Spock nodded. Perhaps it's just as well that we do not entirely agree on the Klingon issue. My acquaintance with Dr. McCoy has taught me the value of a devil's advocate. Jim actually smiled. In other words, you're admitting that McCoy had been right on more than one occasion? The Vulcan frowned. I do not believe I said that exactly, Cap. And then he has to cut off because the triple lift door is open. But still, it's like, I like that. Because that part of the reason why I like that is not just the whole, it is a fun little banter between those two. But because it is also with Bones there. Because he is the most silent of this trio, Bones is. And it is unfortunate that people will forget about him. But he is an equal member of the trio. He fully is. He's just not... he is the third member. I mean, and I hate putting it that way, because he is not the least of them. He is just... He has the smallest voice of the three. But it's like... So you're saying he was right sometime. I wouldn't go that far, Captain. But it's like... No, you said it. We all know it. Okay, let me check my notes on this. Because I just want to make sure I'm not skipping anything. I don't think I have been, but I still want to check. Gets to the bridge and sees Valeris there. Which one thing I did find a little odd, because the whole... We were told you need a helmsman, and it occurred to me that, with the movie... Sulu is off the Enterprise, obviously, because he's captain of the Excelsior, but you don't really know in the movie when that happened. So, I always just read it, because, remember, I first watched these when I was a stupid kid, and wouldn't pick up on all the stuff that's like, wait a minute, no. They had to have been without, they would have had to have replaced Sulu some time ago, if he's the captain of the Excelsior and on this other mission. So who is she replacing? Although maybe that's actually part of the conspiracy as well, that somehow they arranged for the normal helmsman to need to be replaced and got Valeris put in there. But we learn a lot more about Valeris, and I am happy about that. I want to learn still more, but we do learn a lot about her in this. There's also this that... Yeah, we'll see how this goes. Yeah, so this is after the lieutenant recently graduated the top 4 class from Starfleet Academy. I was her sponsor. Certainly Valeris' behavior towards Spock was Vulcanly correct, but some well-sharpened instinct told him, Kirk, that her feelings for him were more than platonic. Impossible to tell, however, whether Spock returned those feelings or was even aware of them. So, I just find that interesting that Valeris... I put it in my notes as attracted to, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in a romantic way. But that there may be greater significance... Spock may be of greater significance to her than just... He is even then, he's not really a mentor, he's just a sponsor. Because it is mentioned later that they'd only met twice at the Academy. But we do find out how these two were connected. And it's actually fairly interesting. And it is part of the whole, I want to know more about her. And then we get this stuff. The whole clear all moorings, awaiting port gates from the mark. From this mark. Kirk glanced surreptitiously at Spock, realizing that this was indeed his last chance to get even for a little joke the Vulcan had played on him years before in this very situation, albeit with a different protege. He damn near scared Jim to death. So this is the whole... where is it so I can get the line right? Lieutenant Valeris, 1/4 impulse power. And she's like, may I remind you, we're supposed to only use thrusters here. And people like, uh-oh. Now, some of it is with his command, some of them knew, oh, he's getting back at Spock. But still is oh no, she had to say something. And he just is like, you heard the order. You do get a little bit of an explanation there later. But, so he is getting revenge on Spock for back in Wrath of Khan, having Saavik pilot the ship out of space dock when Sulu was there, and Kirk was very uncomfortable about that. Because it's like, these are children playing with this ship that I'm on. If they crash it, I'm dead. I don't want to die because of a kid. And now it's like 1/4 impulse through the doors that are still opening. And that, yeah, we get that explained a little later. But yeah, it's and even Spock, he knows. He knows. We get that later too. But anyway, plot a course for Kronos, Lieutenant. Kronos, sir? Her tone conveyed faint surprise. Only the senior bridge crew had attended the classified briefing and knew of the switch in assignment. Wouldn't have been a switch in assignment. Would have just been this is what you're doing. But anyhow, I'm still in the chair. Oh, yeah. I'm still in the chair, Kirk reminded her pleasantly. Aye, sir. Okay. I thought that point was a little later. So after they exit, Lieutenant, he said at length. Valeos faced him, her expression impassive. I don't care if I'm senile. If I sit in this chair and give the word, you jump. So, just adjusting that highlight to also include that. So yeah, he's just laying down the law here that, look, when I give a command, I do expect it to be followed. Okay? I do expect that. And that's why he says, I'm still in the chair, just like, what did I just tell you, woman? We then get him recording his personal log, which she overhears some of, and that's later used at the trial. Which we do get a little bit of on the nose foreshadowing that I am okay with, and I'll explain that when we get to it, but I do want to read this out of the log, because this is a longer version than what's in the movie. The Klingons will be extended every diplomatic courtesy, yet I remain convinced that any attempts at dialogue with them will be futile. Our cultures are simply too different, and too much hatred has been stirred up within the Federation over the massacres on Kudau and Althemus. The Klingons have left behind a trail of embittered survivors within the Federation. So this is also interesting because he's acknowledging something I hadn't quite thought of, that the attack on Themis may have been intentional to make peace less likely, at least as far as the Federation is concerned. Okay, so yeah, there's a little bit more before we get to the on the nose thing. I have it highlighted though. Yeah, so now she's at the door, and he's even when he finally realizes she's there, he's like, I'm gonna talk to Spock about her, and just make sure that he's explain to her certain human customs and etiquette. But it's like, no, you don't just wait at the door, wait inside the door like that. You knock or something. So you aren't just listening in. Then we get this. Valeos, he said, that's not a Vulcan name, is it? It sounds almost Klingon. Impossible, of course. She showed no trace of Klingon heritage. To all outward appearances, she looked to be a full Vulcan. We don't get full explanation here in this chapter, but some of this is explained later. And then we get this, which does include the on-nosing. You piloted well. So this is after they've been talking, and she does press him a little bit as far as what his opinion is with the situation, because she senses that he's not a big fan of potentially having peace with the Klingons, and that a lot of the crew are uncomfortable with being friendly with the Klingons. And she does ask a little bit about that, and he doesn't answer because he's concerned that, oh God, she's a Vulcan. She's going to be interested in peace, and I'm not interested in war, but I really don't want to have to explain it to another Vulcan. I got Spock already. I don't need this one too. It's like that's his kind of mentality here, so he's just dodging the question. You piloted well out of space dock, Lieutenant. Kirk began evenly. She almost smiled. "I've always wanted to try that." He stepped past her. "Only don't try putting words in my mouth." Which is exactly what she does when she provides the log to that she just overheard to the Klingons to be used at his trial. So yeah, but it is I'm okay with it here because this is like I hated the on the nose shit that was in Revenge of the Sith, because some of that was just like, it wasn't just on the nose, it was like full on punching you, trying to break your nose, like when Anakin is putting his hands on Padme's belly and is feeling the kicking, and she's talking about, oh, it's gonna be a son, and he's like, nah, I think it'll be a daughter. It's like, we know what it is, and it was just so painfully unnecessary there. And there were other things as well, like no one could ever imagine Obi-Wan and Anakin ever being anything but the best of friends. It's like, son of a bitch. It's like the whole point of the book is this. I really don't like that book. But this, however, at least this, there is reason for Kirk to say this, because she kind of did actually put words in his mouth. Yeah, I gather you're not enthusiastic about this assignment. I do not think many on board are, sir. And he's like, I'm not answering that one. So it is well set up that he would have that response. It just lines up later that she does in fact do it to him. Oh man, I'm sorry, the flashes from Revenge of the Sith, I so hate that story. Hate that. Well, let me be clear, the novelization. I never cared much for that movie, either. But the novelization I hate it. Not this one, though. This one, going well. This is going well. I'm liking this. It's those flashes, man. Those flashes. Alright, Valeos also goes over and talks to Spock. She'd come down to let Kirk know that they would be approaching the rendezvous soon. Comes to see Spock to tell him the same thing, but also is like that they actually are told while they're in in his quarters that we're here, or maybe it's just not just we're here, but Kronos 1 has arrived. But anyway, she could easily have communicated with him from the bridge, but she had wanted to explain to him that she understood how difficult this particular mission was for him, that she knew of Karl Marx's injury and the death of his son, not from third parties, but from the one who had witnessed it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so she's outside Spock's quarters, thinking on her experience with Kirk here. And we do also get the explanation, not from third parties, but from the one who had witnessed it. The very next thing, she does know Saavik. So that's the explanation there. I'll read through that all. But it is, she's like thinking over this because she also wants to talk to Spock about, I think I just offended the man I didn't mean to. What do I do about that? I mean, they never actually talk about that, but it is, like, also one of those things where it's like, some things you gotta figure out on your own, sorry, Valeros. Anyway, she had learned of his availability as a sponsor quite by chance at the government office in Shanaikar, Shanai, capital Kahr. I got nothing. Where she'd applied for Vulcan citizenship. Okay. There had been a Vulcan in a Starfleet uniform waiting in the queue. Valeos had wanted to join Starfleet since she was a child. She asked the officer questions and learned of Spock's patronage. She and Lieutenant Saavik had since become friends. She felt a kinship with Saavik, though Saavik was half Vulcan and half Romulan, and Valeros was a full-blooded Vulcan. Despite the differences in their background, they shared an experience. Neither had been raised in the Vulcan tradition. Both had chosen it later in life, and neither had a proper Vulcan name. In this chapter, we don't get an explanation for, okay, where was she raised? Who raised her? We don't get that yet. But I am curious. I am definitely curious about what that will be. And maybe it is that she was actually raised by Klingons, that she was captured as a child and raised by Klingons. Um, One thing that I mean, I get that this government office might be like, the DMV. You go there for a bunch of things. It's like she's going there to apply for Vulcan citizenship. I'm assuming that she is at least a young adult. Um, yeah, Savick and her are probably like a decade difference in age. I'm just pegging. Yeah, that's true. They're both lieutenants, so I'm just pegging Valeris as being the same age that Savick was during Wrath of Khan. So yeah, about 10 years between them. Then and it's like Savick wouldn't need to apply for Vulcan citizenship. So hopefully she's just there for another purpose. It's not said, but in any case, it is just these two do hit it off, and Savick is basically like, "Oh, you want to join Starfleet? I know a guy. He helped me. He'll help you. All I need to do is ask. Just you want this? Yes. It'll be taken care of. You don't need to worry." There's also one thing interesting here. Valeris had considered changing her name to something more Vulcan, and Savick said, "Spock told me that, because of my mixed heritage, I am unique, and must therefore find my own path. You are a full-blooded Vulcan, but your past makes you unique. You would do yourself a disservice to forget it." I'm basically saying, don't change your name. That is part of your history, and you should have a value for that. You should value that. And, yeah. And I like that. That's good advice there. I like that. I know Valeris ends up being a bad person, but it's like, these are good lessons, and I'm glad she's learning. And I was tempted to make a joke. I didn't, and technically what I'm about to say now is still not that joke, but, in The Children Many Gifts, in Chapter 2 even, we meet a guy who, man, it'll be fun to talk about him when I get to those videos, whenever that'll be, but in any case, he is an author, and he's talking to a writing class, an English class, and one thing that he tries to push on them is the concept that everyone has a favorite cookie. And what he's actually telling them, just not, I think, I don't remember if he does say it explicitly or not, but the favorite cookie thing is what is the just shorthand, kind of silly way, the way people will remember it, is the idea that everybody has a favorite cookie. The worst human being to have ever existed since cookies were invented has a favorite cookie. And you need to remember that when writing characters, that there is still some humanity to them, something that makes them like you, because maybe you have that same favorite cookie as they do. And remember that. So even though I know Valeris is a bad person, we're still seeing her as just a person here. As, I know she's not human, but we are seeing her as a human being. So it is, I appreciate that, and does seem to be doing a good job of it here as well. Excuse me. So yes, I do. I like that, and it did occur to me we are learning about her favorite cookie essentially, and it's one thing I will also acknowledge, and I know that this is, sorry, I am rambling. This is wow, this is actually going longer than I thought. I know that there is that trend in some modern storytelling that we have to humanize the villains, that we have to make sure that you know exactly why they're doing something. It's like, oh, they're not really that bad, they're misunderstood. That's nonsense. Like that is a way to weaken a villain, and also the hero, because you're trying to erase the difference between them. It's like, no, you need the difference between them. That helps define their separate motivations. That's not what is happening here. Because even if we do get the explanation for Valeris, for why she is part of the conspiracy, it still is, she is part of the conspiracy. She is still a bad guy. But there's also, she is a person. And exploring that is fine. For basically any villain, it's fine to do that. The worst villain you can think of, there's still very likely something human to them. And you can appreciate that, and the fact that, yeah, they're also horrible people. I'm just trying to think. Like, I can't use Palpatine as an example, but Vader is an example. that even if you don't necessarily like the prequel trilogy too much, there still is that, and well, even in the original trilogy, you do see some human aspects to Darth Vader, because he does have a care for Luke. He does care about him. He doesn't just dismiss him. He doesn't, in an evil sense, want Luke dead. It is necessary, so he will do it, because he is still a bad guy. But there is still, he does have a certain amount of love for his son there. And also, like, we see him being human and ultimately falling. I guess that is part of the way to do it. Is a human who falls to evil is still a human, and that's fine to show. The problem is with some modern stories when they're not. It's like they're saying, well, they didn't actually fall. Like maybe they had a small trip, and that's why they're actually doing all this. It's like, no. If they fell to evil, they fell to evil. You need to acknowledge that. That doesn't mean they're not still human, but they did fall. I'm just trying to think if there's another good example in media, but I don't think it's worth doing that. Let's just keep going. Okay, so we get this. That's I like this. So this is Vallejo's talking to Spock. I meant no disrespect to the captain today. It was in no way disrespectful. You had an obligation to remind him about we're only supposed to use thrusters in space talk. It is illogical to blindly obey authority. If I am not mistaken, Captain Kirk demanded my blind obedience. He demanded your trust. That is quite a different thing. She frowned. I do not see how. He correctly judged that the bay doors would open sufficiently for the Enterprise to pass through safely. He was attempting to demonstrate that, although he is scheduled for retirement in the near future, his skills as a commanding officer are undiminished. Spock's expression warmed subtly, as if from an inward smile. And he was exacting revenge on another member of the bridge crew. I believe the expression is turning the tables. I do like that. Spock was like, yep, I know it. I know why you did that. And also one thing that occurred to me while I was reading this aloud just now. Technically, another reason you might not want to use impulse in space dock is that's also equal and opposite reaction stuff. The force, the thrust pushing the Enterprise forward is also going back that way, and so it's hitting something in space dock. I mean, hopefully it is designed to withstand that, but technically, if there was somebody at the windows, could have been like, what the hell? Why is it getting so hot in here? Oh, Kirk! And just, technically there is also that, but it should be designed to be able to handle that. It should, because, yeah, that's, ooh, damn. Yeah, that's... Space dock is also described as having ships being built inside of it, and also being decommissioned, being taken apart in there. Now, I can believe that if a ship is in storage there, is being decommissioned in various things, that they remove the antimatter, because that's way too dangerous to just leave randomly on a ship. But you would still have things like the fusion reactors on there that, and the fuel for that, but I could believe that space dock is actually designed to be able to withstand the spontaneous explosion of a ship, or at least the fusion reactors on a ship within it. Not antimatter. If the antimatter went off, I don't think space dock would survive that. Period. That would not happen. But yeah, no, it would have to be able to survive basically a thermonuclear bomb going off inside of it. That is reasonable. That is very reasonable, because accidents happen. But no, that makes because of the volatility of antimatter, it would make and the fact that you need an active storage system, a magnetic bottle, so you're producing an electromagnetic field to hold the antimatter. I could believe that no, they would, if the ship is going to be sitting there long enough, they take the antimatter out and they store it locally, and will just put it back in the ship if it's needed. That would make a lot of sense. That would make a lot of sense. But you design it to be able to withstand a fusion reactor exploding for whatever reason. That would make sense. Which would mean then that the impulse engines would not be being used inside space dock would not be able to damage it. Anyway, in case you aren't aware, I am very technical. I like that technical stuff. And that's probably the reason why I like Star Trek. It is science fiction that's supposed to be technical. So do get their conversation, which is abridged in the movie compared to this. We do still get the moments, but like the exact pacing's a little different, but we do get... It's... I can't say one is better than the other. They are just different. So there's this whole thing, because Valeos is bringing up the whole... She wants to talk to him because of how are we not at a turning point in the affairs of the Federation? History is filled with turning points. You must have faith. Faith? That the universe will unfold as it should. Is that logical? Valeos asked, confused by her mentor's advice. She had met with him only a handful of times, but had thought she had come to know him well. In her mind, he had come to represent the epitome of logic, of all that she strove to achieve. She had admired his intelligence, his control, but now she felt she was speaking not with the Vulcan, but with the human. And shortly after this, we then do have the logic is the beginning of wisdom, Lieutenant, not the end. And I do like that, how it's... Because in the movie, it's still clear that she doesn't understand what he's saying there. And especially since later on, he straight up says that to her. You weren't listening. That you didn't hear what I was telling you. But it's nice then here to also have the words for her, that the actual thoughts, where it's like, no, she doesn't understand. And she's like, it sounds like it's the human talking, not the Vulcan. Which is also dangerous, because that right there could be a reason why she would not pay attention to it. Just be like, well, why would I care about what the human thinks? I'm a Vulcan. Okay, I think, yeah, so this is my last highlight here. So they get, Cronus 1 arrives, and everyone is on edge because of the whole, that's real close, and our shields aren't up. And Kirk does think it through and is like, I really want to give the order to raise the shields, but that would be really bad for diplomacy. I'll just keep my mouth shut. But he is then thinking about how he'd had Klingons on board the Enterprise, to be sure. Most recently, Captain Claw and his crew of the Klingon vessel Okrona. Which I find odd, because that's a reference to Final Frontier. Which has already been stated to be about 11 years prior. 10, 11 years prior. I mean, it just seems odd that most recently, a decade ago, I get how it's still true, that is most recent, but maybe a different way to describe that? Yeah. He invites them over for dinner. Valeris privately. Just, she gets up and walks over to him and is in his ear. We have some Romulan ale aboard. So no one else can hear, and that officer thinking, whereas in the movie it is, she stays at her station saying it loud enough for everyone to hear. But sorry, my brain is turning off a little bit. It ends with Kirk leaving the bridge. Along with Bones, I think also Spock. Excuse me. In order to, I assume prepare, or just the whole, we're not needed on the bridge anymore. Which, when you think about it, technically makes sense for this. That, Bones doesn't need to be there, but Kirk technically, he can trust his officers to do the things that need to be done without his presence. So yeah, but in any case, yeah. So he leaves, and it looks. I'm assuming that this next chapter, Oh, okay. So chapter 3 starts with, just before he's getting on the lift, the turbo lift, saying, he looks around and is just making clear, I do expect my senior bridge officers to be at dinner. So that would be Spock and McCoy, who are with him, and obviously Spock is going to be there. Bones, no, he's going to have to be there. but that would mean Uhura and Chekhov as well. Scotty, he's not on the bridge at the moment, but it's like, yeah, he will also have to attend. I think that's it. Because the only other bridge officer left that we know of is Valeris, but she's not a senior officer, so yeah. Plus, also, you technically still need an officer on the bridge in command, so. Alright. Well, okay, this wasn't as long as the last one, at least. But, yeah. I mean, it's... As I said earlier, I am feeling good, so thank you. Thank you, Dillard, but... Please keep it up. Please keep it up. At least, one thing that is good is a good sign, I should say. We are at the point that we are definitely within the movie. So, if it was going to be like what happened with Search for Spock, where we're outside the movie, we're before the events of the movie start, and so Vonda McIntyre could start, could explore some more. Characters could be a bit more consistent with what we saw in the prior novelization than in the movie. It's like, okay, we can do that. But then once we got to the movie, it felt confined to now I have to tell the movie story. There were times I definitely got out of that and was more so the next book. Here, it's actually feeling not like it's all that confined to the movie. It is still feeling wider than that. But is following the movie very well. But it is still like it is more than the movie. So yeah, and I'm happy. I'm happy so far. Hopefully that continues. As I've said before, I'm sure I'll say plenty of times in the future again. You can ruin a good story, good game, good book, good movie. It can start that way, and then it turns bad, and it's done. I mean, it's like you can't undo bad easily. That's very, very difficult. And so it can start to good and then fall, and there's basically nothing you can do, because when you fall like that, you risk, okay, somebody's like, I'm out. So it doesn't matter if it then goes up to being perfect. It's like, no, I'm out. You've already lost the person. And that's also why if it starts bad, you can't really turn it good either. Television series are different in that regard, because it's like every episode it can technically be building as they're learning more, but it is also an example of that, where there are people that, to use TNG as an example, because the first couple seasons are not that strong. So there are people that they watch that and it's like, nope, I'm out, don't care. But then once they, like season 3 and definitely season 4, it got a lot more solid. It's like, okay, now I'm in there. And it's like people tell you and things like, yeah, just stick it through the first couple seasons, or even start it here and just go. There is that, but that at least is episodic. I mean, it's literally episodic. So there is that growth there, but not that way when you're in a book, when you're in a movie, when you're in a video game. It's like, nope. If you fall, you lose them, they might leave. I'm just trying to think, do I have a series where it ended badly? X-Files. Yeah. That one takes a turn to the worse. Yeah. I might be able to think of another, but that one is one that it's not my favorite series, but it still is, going pretty well, but it does get weaker at the end, much weaker at the end. Anyway. Hopefully we don't see that turn here. It just continues to be as good as I have been as good as it has been, and I have definitely been enjoying it. I have been finding it interesting. I am interested in continuing to read it. So yeah, and hopefully it'll in fact go up. We shall see. I will say this. I know, I'm making it longer. I'm sorry. I am happy with how we are getting more information about the things that are going on. We're not yet like going to other views. Like I don't have a reason to believe that we will have a like conspirator A is talking to conspirator B, but we don't know who these are yet. When I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, but it's still the way things are built out, or being filled out, I should say. I can believe that we may still get some additional information on the conspiracy, where it just will be in somebody's head, and we will have them thinking about how, like, oh man, it would have been so much easier if Kirk had actually fought instead of surrendering. But now we have to do this. It was like, okay, yes, that was part of the conspiracy. They did expect him to fight and die. But yeah, okay. So we'll. I am. This is still good. This is still good. So thank you. See you next time.